A CEO needed a fake bride, but she became the only truth in his life. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain drifted across the glass panels of the downtown Chicago high-rise, tracing silver lines over the city lights far below. Inside the executive conference room of Parker Industries, the air was sharp with tension and the scent of polished wood. Alexander Parker, the 35-year-old CEO known for being brilliant, cold, and untouchable, tapped his fingers against a contract folder as if the rhythm might steady the storm inside his mind. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Handle a crisis, control the narrative, protect the company. But nothing about his life had been simple since the board demanded he stabilize his image after his brother's scandal. Their solution was ruthless: get married within 30 days or lose majority control. Alexander did not believe in love, nor did he have time for dating, public appearances, or the circus of a real relationship. He needed a spouse on paper, someone who would not interfere, question him, or want anything beyond survival. Someone who could disappear into the background of his powerful world. That was when fate placed her in front of him. Isabella Reyes stood at the far end of the lobby, clutching a stack of overdue notices and a faded backpack slung over one shoulder. She was 26, a waitress working double shifts, exhausted but still carrying a quiet dignity that caught Alexander off guard the moment he saw her. She was only here because the company charity wing had called her in about her mother's medical grant application. She had no idea the CEO himself was watching her from behind the glass wall. He noticed the way she straightened her jacket even though it was threadbare, the way she apologized to the receptionist for taking up space, the way she blinked, hard to hide that she had been crying. There was nothing pretentious about her. No entitlement, no angle, just a woman trying to hold her world together with nothing but grit. A perfect stranger, a perfect candidate. Alexander opened the contract folder once more. The proposal was insane, even he knew that. But desperate men make desperate calculations, and he refused to let the board dictate his life's work. He stepped out of the conference room, his footsteps echoing across the marble floor. Isabella looked up, startled, as the CEO of the entire corporation walked directly toward her. She had seen him on television, in magazines, projected on massive screens at charity galas she could never afford to attend. But up close, he felt larger, sharper, like he carried an entire empire in the set of his shoulders. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice steady, almost unnervingly calm. "Come with me. There is something we need to discuss." Isabella froze. I am sorry, sir. I was just told to wait for someone from the foundation. You will speak with me instead." The elevator doors slid shut behind them, sealing her inside a world made of steel and glass, a world she had never imagined stepping into. Her heart hammered as they rose to the top floor. Inside his private office, floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the skyline. Alexander walked toward his desk, picked up a slim envelope, and turned to face her. "What I am about to propose will sound unreasonable," he said. "But it is a legally sound arrangement that will solve both of our problems." Her eyebrows knitted. "What problems do you think I have?" "You need financial stability," he answered bluntly, "and I need a wife." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. "A wife?" she whispered. "Mr. Parker, I think you have the wrong person." Alexander shook his head slowly, firmly. "I never choose incorrectly." He stepped forward, placing the envelope in her trembling hands. "Read the contract, Miss Reyes, and understand this. I am not offering affection. I am offering survival." Outside, lightning split the horizon, illuminating the two of them standing face to face. A billionaire with everything to lose, and a woman with nothing left except her pride. Neither of them knew it yet, but this cold arrangement would become the one truth that changed both of their lives forever. Isabella stood frozen in Alexander Parker's office, clutching the envelope as if it might burn through her palms. The hum of the city drifted faintly through the glass walls, but inside the room there was only silence, thick and expectant. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Alexander watched her with the same composed intensity he used in boardrooms, calm on the surface and calculating underneath. When she finally found her voice, it trembled. "Mr. Parker, I came here for my mother's medical grant, not for this, whatever this is." Alexander did not flinch. "I am aware of your situation, Miss Reyes. The Foundation forwarded your application to my office this morning. Your mother needs long-term care, and the numbers do not lie." He paused, letting the weight of the truth settle. "You cannot afford it." Her breath hitched. Hearing it spoken aloud hurt more than she expected. She crossed her arms instinctively, as if the gesture could shield her. "I know my circumstances, sir, but marrying a stranger is not the solution." Alexander stepped closer, his expression unshaken. "It is a solution, perhaps the only one that protects what both of us need." Isabella blinked back the sting in her eyes. He spoke without cruelty, but his bluntness cut all the same. "Why me?" she whispered. "Out of all the people you could choose, why me?" He studied her for a long moment. "Because you do not want my money," he said quietly. "You did not ask for anything when you came here. You apologized to my receptionist as if you were the one intruding. You carry dignity even in desperation. That is rare." The words startled her. Compliments were not something she heard often, and when she did, they never sounded like truth. She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Alexander walked to his desk and opened a sleek black folder. Inside were 2 copies of the contract, each page outlined with precise legal language. Isabella did not understand everything written there, but the parts she did understand made her heart pound harder. A 1-year marriage, public appearances, non-disclosure agreements, a stipend that felt unreal, full medical coverage for her mother. Her fingers trembled as she reached for a chair and slowly sat down. The room suddenly felt too big, too cold, too impossibly far from the life she knew. "Miss Reyes," Alexander said, softening his tone slightly, "you are not being forced into anything. I am offering a transaction. You will be protected. Your mother will receive the care she needs. And after 1 year, we part ways." She stared at the contract. Words blurred. Her heartbeat thudded like a drum inside her chest. "But people will talk," she whispered. "People always talk," Alexander answered. "The difference is that I have spent my life making sure their opinions never control me." Isabella swallowed hard. Her mind returned to her mother lying in a hospital bed, her pale face, the overdue bills piling on the kitchen counter at home, the eviction notice taped to their apartment door. She had run out of miracles. She had run out of time. Alexander extended a pen toward her, its silver edge glinting under the office lights. "You may take the contract home and decide, but I will need an answer by tomorrow evening. The board meeting is in 3 days, and they expect to see stability." She did not reach for the pen. Not yet. Instead, she looked up at him, searching his expression for any sign of cruelty or deceit. But all she found was control, purpose, and a strange kind of sincerity she had not expected. "I do not trust you," she whispered. Alexander nodded once. "You do not have to trust me. You only have to survive." The elevator ride down to the lobby felt endless. Isabella held the envelope against her chest, her reflection staring back at her in the mirrored walls. The tired eyes, the worn jacket, the fear, the hope she could not afford to feel. Outside, the night air was cold, and the city lights blurred as tears finally reached her lashes. She had never imagined her life crossing paths with a man like Alexander Parker. She had never imagined being offered marriage like it was a lifeline wrapped in a noose. As she stepped into the rain-soaked street, she whispered to herself, "What am I supposed to do?" But she already knew the truth. There were choices made from freedom, and there were choices made from necessity. And sometimes, the choices made from necessity were the ones that changed everything. The next morning arrived before Isabella felt ready for it. She had barely slept, lying awake with the contract open on the small kitchen table in her apartment. The dim light from the hallway spilled through the cracked door, illuminating the stacks of overdue bills, the shut-off notice from the electricity company, and the pile of medical forms she could no longer face. Her mother slept in the bedroom, her breathing shallow but steady, unaware of the impossible decision weighing on Isabella's chest. By sunrise, Isabella had read the contract 3 times. Every line felt colder than the one before it. A 1-year marriage. Appearances at corporate events. No intimacy unless mutually agreed. Confidentiality. Compensation. Healthcare. A debt-free future. An exit at the end. It felt like selling a piece of her soul, but losing her mother would cost far more. At 9 o'clock sharp, Isabella stepped off the bus in front of Parker Industries. The building towered above her like a monument to power she did not belong to. She touched the contract in her bag, feeling the edges through the fabric. Her hands were shaking. She hated that they were shaking. Inside the lobby, employees in tailored suits rushed past her without a glance. She stood there for several seconds, grounding herself, forcing her breath to steady. Then she approached the reception desk. "I am here to see Mr. Parker," she said softly. The receptionist looked up, recognized her from the day before, and her expression shifted to something between curiosity and respect. "Of course, Miss Reyes. Please go up. He is expecting you." The elevator doors closed, and once again she saw her reflection staring back at her. This time, she looked different. Not stronger, not calmer, just resigned, as if the city had made the decision for her. The doors opened to the top floor, and Alexander Parker was already waiting. He stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the morning sun outlining his silhouette in pale gold. He turned when he heard her enter, and for a brief second, something unreadable flickered across his face. "You came sooner than I expected," he said. Isabella stepped forward and placed the contract on his desk. The folder made a soft thud against the polished wood. "I have made my decision," she said quietly. "I will sign." Alexander did not smile. Relief for him was never loud. It was a slight easing of his shoulders, a breath released only halfway. "Very well," he said. "Let us proceed." He handed her the pen. Her fingers brushed his, and she pulled back instinctively, as if she had touched something too sharp or too alive. She lowered her gaze, took a steady breath, and signed her name. Isabella Reyes. A name she had fought to protect her entire life, now bound to a man she barely knew. Alexander signed next with a calm, practiced motion. When he finished, he closed the folder with a decisive click. "From this moment," he said, "you are my wife in the eyes of the law. Our private ceremony will take place tonight. It will be small and efficient." Isabella nodded, unable to form words. She felt as if her heartbeat had moved to her throat. Alexander continued, "You will be provided attire for the event, transportation, and a schedule for the coming week. Public appearances begin shortly after the ceremony." The weight of the new reality pressed down on her shoulders. "What about my mother?" she asked. "She will be transferred to a private care facility today," Alexander said. "Everything will be covered." Her breath cracked. Gratitude and fear collided inside her chest, sharp and overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. Alexander paused for a moment, studying her. "This is a partnership, Miss Reyes. You do your part, and I will do mine." He walked toward the door, then glanced back. "There is one more thing. From this point on, address me as Alexander when we are alone. You are no longer an employee or a stranger." She hesitated. "Then you should call me Isabella." He nodded once. "Very well." A driver escorted her from the building, and as the car pulled away, Isabella looked back at the towering glass structure. It felt like she was leaving one life behind and stepping into another built on rules, risks, and a contract signed in desperation. She whispered to herself, "I hope I made the right choice." But deep down, she already understood that nothing about this choice had ever been right or wrong. It had simply been necessary. And necessity was powerful enough to change the course of anyone's life, even the life of a quiet waitress who had just become the wife of a billionaire CEO. The afternoon passed in a blur for Isabella. After leaving Parker Industries, she returned home only long enough to pack a small bag and kiss her mother's forehead. The care facility arranged by Alexander had already sent a medical team, and they assured her everything would be handled with professionalism and dignity. It felt unreal. Every part of her life had shifted in less than 24 hours. By early evening, a black sedan arrived outside her apartment. The driver greeted her by name and opened the door with a respectful nod. Inside the car lay a garment bag with a handwritten note attached in precise handwriting. "Wear this. Arrive ready." Alexander. The drive to the courthouse was silent, except for the faint hum of the engine. Isabella pressed her hands together, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. She had imagined her wedding day once, years ago, in the innocent way young girls sometimes do. Flowers, music, a man who loved her. None of those images matched what tonight would be. The courthouse glowed softly under the streetlights when they arrived. The building stood quiet and nearly empty, its marble steps gleaming after a recent rain. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old paper and polished stone. Everything felt muted, as if the world was holding its breath. Alexander stood near the judge's bench, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that emphasized the sharp, controlled lines of his posture. When Isabella walked in, he turned toward her, and something in his expression shifted for the briefest moment. He was not smiling, but he looked at her with a calm that steadied her nerves more than she expected. "You look appropriate," he said quietly. Isabella almost laughed at the choice of words, but her voice would not cooperate. "Thank you," she managed. The officiant, a man in his 60s with kind eyes, cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" They stood facing each other, hands at their sides, two strangers about to bind their lives by law. Isabella felt her pulse hammer beneath her skin. She looked up at Alexander, and for a fleeting second, she wondered what he truly saw when he looked at her. The officiant began reading the vows in a steady, practiced tone. "Do you, Alexander James Parker, take Isabella Reyes to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Alexander's voice was low but unwavering. "I do." The officiant turned to her. "And do you, Isabella Reyes, take Alexander James Parker to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Time paused. Her heart raced. The room felt too still. And yet, somewhere beneath the anxiety and fear, there was acceptance. "I do," she whispered. With two signatures and an embossed seal, the ceremony ended. No flowers, no applause, no celebration. Just ink, paper, and a reality that settled over her like a heavy cloak. Alexander extended his hand. Isabella hesitated before placing hers in his. His grip was firm, steady, grounding. "From this moment," he said, "you are Mrs. Parker." The words echoed inside her chest. Outside, the rain had begun again, pattering lightly against the courthouse steps. A chauffeur held the car door open. Isabella slid inside, and Alexander followed. The drive to the Parker estate was long and quiet. Through the tinted window, Isabella watched the city blur into lights and rain. Her thoughts tangled with fear, disbelief, and the faintest touch of hope she refused to acknowledge. When the gates opened to reveal the mansion, she felt her breath catch. The estate rose before them in elegant white stone, tall columns, manicured gardens, and windows glowing like an invitation she did not know how to accept. "Welcome home," Alexander said as the car rolled to a stop. "Home." The word felt fragile on her tongue. Inside the foyer, chandeliers glittered above them, and portraits of Parker ancestors lined the walls, each one exuding wealth and power. A housekeeper led Isabella upstairs to a guest suite. "This will be your room," Alexander said from the doorway. "Mine is down the hall. Our arrangement begins tomorrow." Isabella nodded slowly. "All right." Alexander paused for a moment, studying her with an unreadable expression. "If you need anything, ask the staff. Otherwise, rest. You will need your strength." When he left, the silence of the massive room enveloped her. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she looked down at the simple gold band now resting on her finger. She whispered into the quiet, "What have I gotten myself into?" But the answer was already woven into the walls around her. She had stepped into a world built of power, rules, and consequences, and she had married a man whose life could swallow her whole. The sun had barely risen when Isabella woke in the vast guest suite, the soft glow of morning stretching across the room. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The high ceiling, the velvet curtains, the quiet hum of central heating did not belong to the life she knew. Then she caught sight of the gold band on her finger, and reality settled around her like a weight she could not lift. Her first morning as Mrs. Parker. She took a slow breath and gathered her courage before stepping out into the hallway. The house felt enormous, too quiet, almost intimidating in its stillness. Downstairs, the faint sounds of cookware and murmured conversation drifted from the kitchen. Isabella followed the scent of coffee until she found herself in a bright breakfast room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Alexander was already there. He sat at the table, reading the financial section of the morning newspaper, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. He did not look up immediately, but when he did, his eyes briefly softened with acknowledgement before returning to their usual controlled calm. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." Isabella pulled out a chair across from him. "As well as I could," she admitted. A housekeeper approached with a polite smile. "Mrs. Parker, would you like tea, coffee, or something to eat?" The title still startled Isabella, but she answered quietly, "Coffee, please, and toast is fine." Alexander folded the newspaper with precise movements. "There is no need to limit yourself. You may eat whatever you want." Isabella forced a small smile. "Old habits, I guess." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You will need energy. Your schedule begins today." "My schedule?" she asked. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a list of public events, charity luncheons, investor dinners, and board observations. Her name, Isabella Parker, appeared beside his on every line. "You will attend with me," he said. "Our marriage must look legitimate, even to those who look closely, especially to them." Isabella swallowed. "So this starts immediately?" "Yes. The world will not wait." Before she could respond, the head housekeeper entered with a garment bag and a small box. "Mr. Parker, everything you requested has been prepared." Alexander nodded. "Set them here." The woman placed the garment bag on a nearby stand and the box on the table. When she left, Alexander gestured toward the box. "Open it." Inside was a delicate necklace, a thin line of diamonds that shimmered in the morning light. Isabella stared at it, overwhelmed. "This is beautiful, but I cannot accept something like this." "It is not a gift," Alexander said. "It is protocol. You will be photographed frequently. Presentation matters." The words were blunt, but not cruel. Isabella closed the box gently, unsure whether to feel grateful or trapped. Alexander rose from the table. "Finish your breakfast. In 1 hour, the staff will help you prepare for our first event. It is a small charity luncheon, low stakes, but public enough to set the tone." She nodded. "All right." As he walked past her toward the door, she heard him pause. When she looked up, he was watching her with an expression she could not read. "If anyone treats you poorly today," he said quietly, "you will let me know." The words surprised her, and warmth flickered in her chest before she pushed it down. "I can handle myself. I am aware," he said, "but you do not have to handle everything alone." Then he left the room, leaving Isabella with her coffee, her nerves, and a day that could either make her look like she belonged in this world or expose every fear she carried. An hour later, she stood before a mirror while 2 stylists adjusted the soft cream-colored dress chosen for her. Her hair was pinned in a simple yet elegant style, and the necklace glittered softly at her collarbone. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. When she descended the grand staircase, Alexander waited near the door. For the first time, his gaze lingered, just long enough for her to feel it. "You look appropriate," he said, the closest thing to praise she had heard from him. "Thank you," she replied, steadying her breath. The chauffeur opened the door. Isabella stepped toward the car, aware that the moment she crossed the threshold, she would be stepping into a new role, one she had never asked for but now had to master. As the car door closed behind them, Isabella whispered to herself, "Let me get through today." But deep in her chest, the truth was growing. This was not just a day to survive. It was the beginning of a life she had no idea how to navigate. The charity luncheon was held at an upscale hotel in downtown Chicago, the kind of place where the chandeliers sparkled like frost and every conversation sounded rehearsed. As the chauffeur opened the door, Isabella stepped out beside Alexander, her heartbeat thundering under the elegant dress. Cameras flashed instantly. Reporters called his name, and the sudden attention made her breath catch. Alexander's hand hovered near the small of her back, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of his presence. "Stay close," he murmured quietly. "People here notice everything." Inside the ballroom, dozens of wealthy donors mingled with polished confidence. The moment Alexander entered, heads turned. Conversations shifted. People straightened their posture. He commanded the room with effortless authority. Isabella stayed beside him, offering polite smiles, trying not to look like she was drowning in a world that did not belong to her. A board member, Richard Hale, approached them with a fixed smile. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a tone that carried subtle condescension. Alexander, always punctual. And this must be your new wife. Isabella extended her hand. It is nice to meet you. Richard shook her hand, holding it a second too long, his eyes scanning her appearance with thinly veiled judgment. Ah, the story is true then. You married rather quickly. He chuckled. Some of us were betting it would never happen. Isabella felt her cheeks warm, but she forced her smile to remain steady. Life can surprise you, she said gently. Alexander spoke before Richard could continue. It was not a decision for others to speculate on. His voice carried a warning edge. Richard lifted his glass as if unfazed. Of course, of course. But his gaze slid toward Isabella again. Tell me, Mrs. Parker, where did you two meet? Was it at one of the corporate galas? Or perhaps during a charity event? I cannot imagine Alexander meeting someone outside these circles. The question hit harder than expected. Isabella opened her mouth, but the words tangled. She had rehearsed the prepared answer with Alexander earlier, but the pressure made it slip. Alexander stepped in smoothly. It was private, he said, and it will remain private. Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. How mysterious. He took a sip of champagne and leaned closer to Alexander. You know the shareholders will want reassurance. A sudden marriage raises questions. People wonder what exactly you are trying to secure. The implication hung heavy in the air. Alexander's jaw tightened. I am securing stability. That is all. Richard gave a thin smile. Well, let us hope your arrangement holds up under scrutiny. Before Isabella could react, Richard drifted away into the crowd, leaving a trail of whispered conversations behind him. Isabella exhaled slowly, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten. I am sorry, she murmured. I did not answer quickly enough. I think I made that worse. Alexander looked down at her, his expression unreadable. You did not make anything worse. His tone softened slightly. Richard enjoys provoking discomfort. He has always mistaken cruelty for influence. Isabella lowered her gaze. I just do not want to be a burden. You are not, Alexander said firmly. But this world is not kind. You will need to develop thicker armor. She nodded, swallowing her nerves. I will try. As they moved through the room, Isabella began to notice the subtle shift. Some people smiled warmly at her, others examined her with cold curiosity, and a few whispered openly as she passed. Every look made her spine stiffen. During the seated portion of the luncheon, the whispers grew louder. Isabella caught fragments of conversations from nearby tables. She is pretty, but she is clearly not from our circle. Did you see her dress? It is tasteful, but not couture. He must be hiding something. No way this marriage is real. The comments pricked like needles under her skin. She tried to focus on her plate, but the words echoed. Across the table, Alexander noticed her growing tension. He leaned slightly toward her. Look at me, he said quietly. She lifted her eyes. You belong here, he said. Not because of anything you wear or anything you come from. You belong because you are my wife. They will adjust. His voice was steady, grounding, and for a brief moment, Isabella felt something shift inside her chest. Not trust, not comfort, but something close to it. The luncheon concluded with applause, but Isabella barely heard it. As they walked toward the exit, she felt a rush of relief that it was over. But just before they reached the doors, a reporter stepped forward, microphone raised. Mr. Parker, one question. Your marriage surprised the entire city. Can you tell us how long you and Mrs. Parker have known each other? Alexander's pause lasted half a second, but it was enough for the cameras to lean forward. Long enough, he said. Long enough to know this marriage is exactly where we both need to be. He placed his hand firmly at Isabella's back for the first time, guiding her forward with unmistakable certainty. And in that moment, under the glare of flashing lights and whispered judgments, Isabella felt the first real shift between them, a shift she never expected, a shift that terrified her even more than the contract itself. The drive back from the luncheon was quiet, but it was not the comfortable kind of quiet. Isabella sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, replaying every whisper, every stare, every calculated smile that had cut through her defenses. Alexander remained composed beside her, checking messages on his phone as if he had not noticed how shaken she was. But he had noticed. He always noticed. He simply did not speak until he was ready. When they arrived at the estate, Isabella stepped out of the car first, eager to escape the tension pressing against her ribs. She walked quickly toward the front steps, but Alexander caught up to her in 2 long strides. "Isabella," he said evenly, "do not walk away." She stopped but did not turn around. Her voice was thin. "I am not walking away. I just needed a moment." Alexander came to stand beside her. Richard Hale's behavior was inappropriate. The comments from the guests were inappropriate. But you handled yourself better than most people I know. Isabella let out a soft breath. It did not feel like I handled it well. You did, he said, and I will address Richard. She finally turned to look at him. How? By threatening him? He is part of your board. Alexander met her eyes, his expression unreadable. I do not threaten, I correct. As they entered the foyer, the marble floors gleamed under the chandelier light. Isabella felt small again, like the ceiling was too high and the walls too wide. But what hurt most was the awareness that she was a stranger in her own home. A housekeeper approached politely. Dinner will be served in an hour, Mr. Parker. Alexander nodded. That is fine. Isabella took a small step backward. I think I would rather eat upstairs. Alexander turned toward her, surprised. Why? I just need space. Today was a lot. He watched her carefully, studying the tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes. You are overwhelmed, he said quietly. Yes, she admitted, and I do not want to pretend at dinner. Not tonight. For the first time since their marriage, Alexander looked conflicted. He was a man who moved with certainty, but now he hesitated. Very well, he said at last, but before you go upstairs, there is something you should know. She waited, bracing herself. Someone leaked a rumor this afternoon, he said. A rumor about our marriage. Her stomach dropped. Already? It spreads quickly when people want it to. He took a slow breath. Someone told a reporter that our marriage is a strategic move. They implied it is not real. Isabella felt the world tilt beneath her feet. What does that mean for us? It means we must be cautious, Alexander replied. Any misstep will feed the narrative. The fear she had been holding back crept into her voice. Alexander, I am trying. I really am, but I do not know how to be someone I am not. He stepped closer, his tone steady but firm. I am not asking you to pretend to be someone else. I am asking you to stand beside me, even when the world is loud. Her breath shook. I do not want to destroy your reputation. A faint shadow crossed his eyes. It is not my reputation I am worried about. Before she could ask what he meant, he took a step back. The distance felt colder than the marble under her feet. You may eat upstairs tonight, he said, but tomorrow we face the public again, and I will not let anyone diminish you. Isabella nodded and turned toward the staircase, her dress brushing against the railing as she climbed. Every step felt heavier than the last. By the time she reached her room, her chest felt tight. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers pressed to her temples, trying to process everything. In a single day, she had been judged by strangers, examined like an object, and used as ammunition in a corporate power struggle she did not understand. And now the world was already whispering that her marriage was a lie. She whispered to the empty room, I do not belong here. But even as the words left her lips, she remembered the way Alexander had stood beside her in front of the reporters, his hand at her back, his voice steady and sure. For the first time, she wondered whether he was struggling too, trapped by a marriage built on necessity and surrounded by people waiting for him to fail. Downstairs, Alexander remained in the foyer long after she had disappeared upstairs. He stared at the closed doors, jaw tight, shoulders tense. He knew the truth, she did not. The rumor was not a misunderstanding. It was a targeted attack, and it was only the beginning. The next morning, the Parker estate felt different. The quiet was heavier, as if the walls themselves sensed what was coming. Isabella woke early, her stomach tight with unease. She expected another day of public appearances, more whispers, more judgment. But when she stepped into the hallway, she found a sense of urgency lingering in the air. Downstairs, Alexander stood in the foyer with his assistant and two members of his legal team. Their expressions were tense. Papers were being exchanged. A tablet screen glowed with a headline Isabella could barely make out from a distance. When Alexander saw her, he dismissed everyone with a single nod. The room emptied, leaving just the two of them. "Isabella," he said, "we need to talk." Her heart dropped. "What happened?" He handed her the tablet. The headline was painfully clear. Anonymous source claims Alexander Parker's marriage is a contractual deal. The article went on to describe the wedding as a business arrangement, hinting at manipulation, desperation, and immorality. The comments were vicious. Her hands shook slightly as she lowered the device. How did they find out? "They did not find out," Alexander said. "Someone told them." She swallowed. "Richard Hale?" "That is my assumption," he replied. "He has wanted control of the company for years. If he can destabilize public trust in me, he gains leverage." "Can he take the company from you?" she asked. Alexander paused. "If shareholders panic enough, yes." The fear hit her like cold water. "Then what do we do?" "We fight," he said simply. "But this time, I will not let you stand alone in the crossfire." He stepped closer, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I will hold a press conference, today. I will address the rumor publicly, and I will make it clear that you are my wife and that this marriage is not a weakness." Her breath trembled. "Alexander, this will expose me even more." "I know," he said softly, "but I will not let them use you to break me." Later that afternoon, they arrived at Parker Industries. Dozens of reporters waited outside, cameras flashing wildly. Security guided them through the crowd, but Isabella could hear the questions being shouted. "Mrs. Parker, is your marriage real? Did you marry for money? Was this arranged for corporate gain? Is it true you were chosen because you were desperate?" The words cut deep, but Alexander remained beside her, his hand resting on her back in unmistakable support. Inside the lobby, he turned to her. "Stand with me," he said. "Only if you are willing." She met his eyes and nodded. "I am your wife. I will stand with you." When they stepped onto the stage, the room erupted with camera flashes. Microphones filled the air like an ocean of noise. Alexander raised a hand, and silence slowly spread. He looked directly into the lights, into the lenses, into the eyes of everyone who questioned him. "My marriage," he began, "is not a scandal. It is not a strategy, and it is not a lie." The murmurs rippled through the room. "Yes," he continued, "our decision was fast. And yes, it surprised many of you." He reached for Isabella's hand, lacing his fingers with hers in a gesture that did not feel practiced at all. "But I do not owe the world an explanation for the moments in my life that are genuine." A reporter raised her voice. "Are you saying this marriage is not contractual?" Alexander's jaw tightened, not with anger but with conviction. "This marriage is real in the ways that matter. I married a woman who carries strength in silence, dignity in hardship, and grace even under cruelty. If any of you question her place beside me, you are questioning my judgment, and I do not make poor judgments." The room fell completely still. Another reporter spoke up. "Then who leaked the accusation?" Alexander's voice did not waver. "Someone who believed they could intimidate me. Someone who underestimated my wife." Every camera turned to Isabella. She took a breath, feeling her heart pound. Then she stepped slightly forward. "I am not from your world," she said. "I did not grow up with wealth or influence, but I know what it means to stand by someone. And regardless of where this began, I am here now. This is my husband. This is my marriage. And I will not allow anyone to rewrite our story for us." Her voice did not tremble. Not once. The room erupted into noise again, but Alexander squeezed her hand, grounding her. Hours later, after the press had cleared and the building quieted, they rode home in silence. But it was not the silence of distance. It was something warmer, something unspoken. When they reached the estate, Isabella stepped out of the car and paused at the entrance. Alexander joined her, stopping beside her under the soft glow of the porch lights. "You were extraordinary today," he said. She looked up at him. "I just told the truth." He held her gaze for a long moment. So did I. For the first time since the contract had been signed, Isabella saw something in his eyes that was not control or calculation. It was something real, something fragile. "Alexander," she whispered, "what happens now?" His answer was quiet, but certain. "Now," he said, "we stop pretending." And as they walked inside together, their hands brushing, it no longer felt like they were acting for cameras or contracts. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both of them were finally ready to see unfold. The following days moved with a rhythm Isabella had never imagined. After the press conference, public opinion shifted almost overnight. The footage of Alexander defending her spread across social media, and viewers who had once doubted her now spoke with admiration. Comments changed from skepticism to support, and news anchors praised her composure and sincerity. For the first time since stepping into this world, Isabella felt like she could breathe. But inside the Parker estate, something deeper was changing, something quieter, something the cameras could not capture. Alexander was different now. He no longer kept his distance behind a wall of formality. He lingered in conversations. He sought her out at breakfast. He asked about her mother, her past, her dreams. Sometimes he simply stood beside her in silence, the kind of silence that felt shared instead of heavy. One evening, a week after the press conference, Isabella found him in his study. Papers were spread across the desk, and attention sat in the set of his shoulders. She stepped closer. "Alexander," she said softly, "is something wrong?" He looked up from the documents, and for the first time she saw genuine exhaustion in his eyes. "The board wants an internal review," he said. "Richard Hale pushed for it. He claims the marriage has disrupted company stability." Her chest tightened. "I am sorry. This is because of me." Alexander stood abruptly, the chair sliding back. "Do not say that again." His voice was steady but urgent. "This is because Richard Hale cannot stand that I chose someone outside his world. This is about control, not you." She stepped closer. "What can we do?" Alexander exhaled slowly. "What we always do, we face it." The next morning, he called for a full board meeting. Isabella accompanied him, even though she knew the environment would be cruel. When they entered the boardroom, Richard Hale was already there, smiling with calculated confidence. "Alexander," Richard said, "I appreciate your punctuality. Shall we begin?" The meeting quickly turned tense. Richard presented charts, quotes, and manipulated data to paint the marriage as a reckless decision. He questioned Isabella's background, implying she lacked the refinement to stand beside a CEO. He suggested her presence was a threat to investor trust. Every word was a blade. Isabella remained silent, her hands clasped tightly, but she felt Alexander watching her. Then, finally, he rose. "I have heard enough," he said. The room fell silent. "Richard, your attempt to undermine my leadership is transparent. You attacked my wife because you believed she was the weakest point. You believed she would break." Alexander's voice deepened. "You were wrong." He placed his hands flat on the table. "In the past weeks, Isabella has shown more strength, dignity, and integrity than I have seen from many people in this room. If that threatens you, perhaps you should question your own position, not hers." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. "And one more thing," Alexander added. "I conducted a private audit. The anonymous leak to the press came from your office, Richard." The color drained from Richard Hale's face. Alexander continued. "You violated confidentiality agreements and endangered the company's reputation. Effective immediately, I am recommending your removal from the board." Gasps filled the room. Richard sputtered. "You cannot do this." "I can," Alexander said. "And I will." The vote was swift. Richard Hale was removed. Alexander did not look away from him even once. After the meeting, as they stepped out into the hallway, Isabella let out a long breath she did not realize she had been holding. "You did not have to defend me like that," she said quietly. "Yes," Alexander replied, "I did." She met his eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because I meant every word I said at that press conference. Because you deserve to be protected. Because you deserve to be seen." Emotion rose in her chest. Before she could speak, he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. Isabella, he said slowly, we started this as an arrangement, a contract, something cold. He opened the box. Inside was a ring not extravagant, not loud, but elegant and unmistakably chosen with care. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like something we had to do, and it became something I wanted. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Alexander stepped closer. So today, without contracts or conditions, I am asking you something real. He paused, his voice steady but gentle. Will you stay with me? Not as a requirement, not as a signature, but as my wife. Truly. Tears filled her eyes. Alexander? He waited. She nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, I want to stay. A rare smile touched his lips, the kind of smile that reached his eyes. He slipped the new ring onto her finger. It felt different than the first, warmer, meaningful. When he pulled her into his arms, the tension of the past weeks finally melted away. The world outside could doubt them, judge them, question them, but for the first time, their truth did not need defending. They were no longer pretending. They were no longer surviving. They were choosing each other.